All right, guys. So in this video, I'm going to explain how you can create a Telegram bot that it will connect to a Google Sheet and Telegram via the API, and then you can sell things through the bot. So for example, this is the bot, right? And the idea is that we will have a mini app within Telegram. And once someone texts you, you will get like this welcome message that you see here, and then the client can open the card like this. The client or the lead, right, will be able to select the products that you have, and this product will be in a Google Sheet as you can see here. So for example, here in this demo, I will just select this. See, it's 1.4, and then you just input a name, right? And then add a string, yeah, delivery address, so delivery test. And then once you check out, you get like the summary of the order that is confirmed. And then if you go here to a Google Sheet, you will be able to see the order, right? So the idea with that is that you can have this, and then people can contact you and the orders go straight to Google Sheet. So let's get into it. I'm Nicolas, and here at automationforgrowth.com, we have helped over 100 businesses automate their workflows. Yeah, so the idea with these videos is that I want to showcase some previous automations that I've done for some clients. So hopefully this is helpful for you guys. So let's get into it. All right, so what's the agenda for this video? We need to do some things first so we can set up this. The first thing is we need to set up Telegram and get the API key. The cool thing about Telegram is that they have like something that is called the grandfather bot, and with that we just text the bot, and then it does the setup for us. So it's pretty cool. Then once we get the API token, we need to set up the web app URL, and this is done in Google Sheets. And the idea with this is because once we interact with the bot, it's gonna send a notification somewhere, and that's called a webhook, right? So we need to capture that webhook somewhere so we can process the data. And in this case, what we're doing is getting the order and putting it in the Google Sheet, right? So we will set up a web app URL in Google Sheets that sends that to a Google Sheet, and then we can write that to a Google Sheet, right? So I will explain that once we get into the second point. The third point basically is the setup, just for the people who only want to understand how to do the Telegram bot part and the web app URL. Once we get to the setup, I will just explain how you can put everything together, and that's it. You have this running. And for the people who care about like how everything is structured and the architecture in general, in point 4, I will explain the code and how everything is structured. So if you want to like expand on this, or maybe remove things that you don't need, all right? So let's get into it. All right. So the first point, the Telegram bot. So how can we get this Telegram bot API token, right? So as I mentioned, Telegram has something really cool, which is called the BotFather, and pretty much it's a bot that you just text, and that's all the setup for you, right? So usually, when you're doing the API stuff, like API, when you wanna like set up the app for the API and getting the token and everything, usually you gotta do it manually, right? So you gotta go to the platform, create the app, and then get the token. But for Telegram, it's pretty straightforward. You just text a bot, and it does everything for you. You just reply to the questions, right? So I will show you here how it works. So you go to Telegram, and in Telegram, you need to text this bot. Is at BotFather, right? So you just text there, and this is the chat. And basically, the way you interact with this bot is through commands, right? So the first command that you gotta do is this one, right? So if we just do it live, I will show you. You use /star, and it will send you everything that you can do with this bot, right? So in this case, the only thing that we need is this part here, right? /token, right? So we only need a token for this, so we can interact with our own bot. But if you want to like do more things, just be aware that you can create all this stuff, right? All right, so once you input /token, you will get this message. Right now, because I already created a bot and I was testing, it's saying that I need to choose a bot to get this API token. But like, if it is the first time that you're doing this, you will go straight to this command here, which is creating the bot, because it's the first time you're doing it, you don't have a bot. But if you have a bot already, you can choose one from the list if you have. In this case, I want to create one so you can see how it works. And this is pretty much what will happen if you don't have a bot, right? So it will ask you like, what is the name that you want to give to the bot? So this part is important. This is the name of the like the bot, yeah, where the leads the clients will interact with, right? So you gotta make sure that it's kind of like clear, so you can share it with your clients. The thing is that what I've noticed is like it's kind of tricky because the names are kind of like already taken, most of them. So you gotta like really try hard to like give a unique name, right? So you can see, for example, the one that I was testing before, you saw in the message that it was a bunch of words and stuff. So you just gotta be patient here and just input a name that kind of makes sense, but it's also unique, right? But in this case, it's just a demo, so I will just input whatever and see if that works. You gotta end like with this keyword, but good. So now that's it, like once you input the name, it kind of creates everything under the hood for you. And now it gives you the token, right? Which is this one here. And that's pretty much it, right? So once you have these, we are ready with the first point, and then I will move on to the second point, all right? All right, so now we're in the second point, how to get this web app URL. So we finished already with the first point, how to get the API token. You saw pretty quickly just texting a bot and you got the token straightforward like that, right? So now let's get into the second point. So to get this URL, what you do is that you go to a spreadsheet that I will put down below in the description. You can make a copy of it, right? It's free. Just make a copy of the spreadsheet, but you need to deploy that script in your account, right? So it works. So for example, let me go to a spreadsheet so I can show you. All right, so this is the spreadsheet, right? So you can see here, this is what I was doing in the demo. So the idea is that you go here to extensions and then app script. And here in app script, you don't need to do anything. You just go here where it says deploy, new deployment. Then you select this little gear here and you select web app, right? And the idea here is that you just get a name, right? So we can be like version 1, and then you select this part, execute as. You can select like the email that you have. And then this part is important, right? So just make sure you put here anyone, otherwise it won't work if you are calling it from other account that is not your account, right? So in this case, put anyone, and then you should be able, like anyone should be able to interact with this app, right? So you click in deploy, and that's it, you get this web app URL, right? And this is the thing that I was mentioning that we need, right? The first time that you do this, most probably you will get a pop-up that you need to authorize. So quickly, I will explain how you can do the authorization, all right? All right, so just to show you how, if it is the first time that you're doing this, how it will look like for you, you might get this, which is just authorize. So you click here and it will take you to this flow from Google that you need to authorize. So what you do is you click here in advanced, so you can see advanced, and then you go to Telegram Sales Assistance. That's the name of the script. And then here, just make sure that you select this. It's pretty much giving access. If you don't select this, it won't work. Just make sure you check both these, and then you click on continue. And then you just give it a few seconds, and we are back to the first part, which is getting you the URL, all right? So just keep it handy, right? You can copy and save it somewhere. Just keep it handy, or just don't close the tab. If you close the tab by mistake, just do a new deployment and do the same thing. You will get a new URL. That's pretty much the logic here, okay? All right, so with that, we already have the web app URL. So let's get into the next part, which is the setup. So here I will explain how we can just, put everything together, all the pieces together, and how you can test it yourself. So if you go back to a spreadsheet, before I get into how to put the tokens and where to put the tokens, I will explain how I create the spreadsheet so you can understand in general, right? So here we have the first tab, which is orders. An order basically is like once the client or the lead or whoever interact with that app, you can see that once they click and check out, the order goes here, right? So we have the ID, we have the user ID. In this case, just like a user ID that you are interacting with the app in Telegram. In case you want to like, do some analysis or something, this will be a unique ID. Then we have the username. Same, if you want to like use it later on to like text people or something like follow-ups or whatever, you can use this. Then here, this is just a customer name. Then we have the product ID, and this ID comes from this tab. I will explain it in a second. And then here you can see what they chose, right? So for product ID number one, I needed the order is three of that. Then for product ID number two, we got four of that, right? And so on. And here is the same thing, but with a name, right? So you can see here that pretty much the names I was testing with is just like apples, oranges, and strawberries. So three of apples, four oranges, two strawberries, right? And then here the price, this is the total price for everything. And this is the delivery address, right? So the idea with this is just, you can just text the person back and say like, okay, what's a good time or whatever, if you want to do like some follow up. Otherwise, it's just like, you go to this address and charge the person. And this is a created ad. This is important in case you want to do some analysis, when the order was placed. All right. So this logs part, this tab is like once you do, like, for example, if you click set up things, or if you like, the app is interacting or something with someone, you can see everything here, right? So you can see that someone texting me, what's the user ID, what's the status. And the idea with this is like once you can keep a log of what is happening, but also if something breaks, an error or something is happening, you can see here what happened. All right. So I made it that way so you can debug yourself if something breaks. And then here, this is the other tab that I say is important. This is products. So this tab here, we have four columns. So one is the product ID. You can think of it like an SKU in case you're using SKUs in your business. So you can put the SKU here. That's the unique ID for that product. And then here we have the names, right? So I just was testing with apple, oranges, strawberries, but you can put whatever here. And then this is the description. So in this case, I will just put in like 1 kilo of apples cost $5. You can mold it to whatever your business is, right? And then here we have price, pretty straightforward. What's the price or whatever you put here, right? So that's the logic there. And just make sure that you put it here like this, so it will show in the mini app as you show in the demo, right? And then this config, this is what I'm going to explain next. So here you see we have two things. So one is the Telegram token and the other one is the web app URL. So that's pretty much what we got in the first step. This one, how to get the Telegram part. Just remember you got that in Telegram. So if we check, so remember this is the token that we got. So you just need to hover over the token and you click and it gets saved in your clipboard and you paste it here, right? And then here the web URL is the thing that you just deploy, this one here. You copy that and you put it here, all right? So once you do that, you need to set up the webhook, like you need to deploy that. So you don't need to worry about how to do it. I already set up this for you. So you just click, like for example, once you make a copy of this sheet, you will see in the ribbon this button, right? It says Telegram. So here you have two things. One is to create or refresh the webhook. So you will click this once you put these two tokens here. And the idea with this button is that we will create the webhook, right? So it will create the thing that we need so Telegram can send things, right? Like every time someone texts or something, and the Google Sheet will capture that. So you will just click here, the code will take care of it, and it will create a webhook for you, right? And then the second part, the backlog, this is just in case, like for example, you are texting and something happens, right? You never know. Like for example, maybe a Google server stopped working for like a minute and it didn't reply to a person or something. It will create like a backlog, like you can think of it like trash that it will exist there. Something happened and you don't know why, and you need to like refresh like you need like a whole refresh of the app so it kind of like works from scratch. You click here in clean backlog. Pretty much does some cleaning, and then you can start from scratch. I just put it there in case you don't need to touch the code. All right. So in this case, you click here. You just wait a few seconds. It will create a webhook, and then you can clean the backlog if you want, and then that's it. Right. So you have the app working. All right, so with that, we finished with the setup. So again, the spreadsheet link is down below in the description. Just go there, make a copy of it. And from there, just follow the first step and the second step to get the tokens. Click in those two buttons there in the ribbon, and then everything is ready to go. Okay. Again, if you wanna like start testing, or you want to like do changes to the products and stuff, and you want everything to refresh, just click there. Every time that you do a change, like in the spreadsheet, you gotta create a new webhook, and then you gotta create, and you wanna click the backlog, okay? So it kind of like refreshes everything. Just make sure of doing that. So now with that, we'll finish with the first part of like the first section, which like these three parts. So for the ones who care about like the code and how is everything working under the hood, I'm going to explain the code, okay? So I will start first with architecture. I will explain how everything is connected, and then we will jump into the code, okay? So first, I will explain the architecture, right? So basically, this is Telegram, and then the idea is that this is like the front end, right? So this is the UI, the user interface, the front end. And then here in the back, we have the Google Sheet, right? And in Telegram, we have something that is a mini app, but that HTML, the way it works is that it's an HTML. So we need to create that in the Google Sheet, right? So you will see in AppScript, we have a file that is an HTML. And the idea is that once it goes to Telegram, it kind of renders that as a mini app, and then from there we can use it, right? But then the way we connect these two things is like when we are sending data to Telegram, meaning like we're sending, for example, the welcome message, we are using the API itself, right? So the token that we got, right? So we're kind of like using, like writing data, right, to Telegram. But when Telegram is replying and it's kind of like sending data to a Google Sheet, it's doing it through a webhook. Okay, so it cannot just notify somewhere. In this case, that's why we set it up to have a WebApp URL, because that's where Telegram is not notifying, right? So when you click in Google in the ribbon to create a webhook, that's what it's doing, right? It's kind of like using the URL and telling Telegram, okay, this is my app, send the notifications there, right? So that's pretty much what it's doing here. And then once it goes to the webhook, that goes to a sheet, and then we get the data. For example, when we are like, when the client clicks checkout, that's a notification, it goes to a webhook, and then it gets written in the sheet orders, right? That's pretty much the logic there. So I will explain now the code. Okay, so here in the spreadsheet, and the way you see the code is that you go here to extensions and AppScript, right? Here in AppScript, you see that I kind of like split everything, all the logic in files, among files. So you can see here that we have like multiple files, and each file is doing something, right? So we don't have like a spaghetti code, and we have the logic like, clean. The idea with this is that if you want to keep building, it's easy to spot errors, it's easy to keep building, refactor code. That's the logic, right? So you can see here in the file 00, we have the config. And basically this is a variable with more variables inside. And the idea here is that we want to make it simple when we want to change something, right? We don't want to get into the code and like change and try to find where we use the variable and everything. So here we're setting up some variables that we are kind of like used in multiple parts, and it's like are variables that we might change, right? So for example, one of them, let me make this bigger so you can see. So one of them is the sheets products, right? So that's pretty much where we're running the products, so we can render them in the mini app. So in this case, I'm calling that sheet that tab products. In case you want to change that, change it here. This one is for the config, same thing, from where we are reading the tokens. Right now, I just call it config sheet logs, where we want to like the logs. Same for orders. This part, the Telegram API base, this is just like something static here, because like as I mentioned when I was drawing, that when we are talking Telegram, we're using the API itself, right? So we're using like writing stuff. So that's why we're using this URL. And then this is just for the logs, the time zone. In this case, it's just UTC, it's a standard. In case you want to see the logs in a specific time zone, just put a changer here, and then you will be able to see the specific time zone there, right? Okay, now login. So basically, this is just for login. You can see here that I have like some comments, so it can explain the file quickly. In this case, here I just have some functions, some helper functions that is like login right into a log sheet when we are interacting with the app, okay? Nothing fancy here. Now here we have the sheet. So this part is the logic that we have for a sheet, meaning like everything that is sheet related. So in this case, for example, we have this first function, which is like creating a tab. This is just in case you delete the tab by mistake or something. The code before writing, for example, a log, it will make sure that the logs sheet exists. If it doesn't exist, it creates the sheet, right? So that's pretty much the logic for this one. It's kind of like making sure that it's creating the sheet if you delete it by mistake. This one is doing the same, but for the headers, like in each tab we have a header. So it's just making sure that we have the headers. And these are some helper functions. So for example, this one, we're kind of like using it to read the data from config sheet. And this one, for example, is reading the cell B2. This one is reading the cell B3, right? Those are the tokens. This one is to reading the products from the product sheet so we can render them. And here, this one, what we're doing is kind of like mapping the products, right? We need that for the HTML. Okay, so and this function is to append the webhook data that we're getting. Remember, now the way Telegram interacts with us with this Google Sheet is through a webhook, right? So it sends a notification. Pretty much what it does this is like getting that and appending that in the logs, right? And this one what it's doing is basically kind of like leveraging this one because like Telegram sometimes sends the same webhook multiple times, like sometimes the client checks out and it will send a notification that someone checks out multiple times. So what we're gonna do is like we're gonna get in the first time that and we're writing that in the sheet, but we don't wanna keep writing the same order, for example, or the same log multiple times, right? So what we're doing here is pretty much doing that, right? So we're making sure that if it is the first time that we see this notification, we using the sheet, right? We write it wherever we need. But if it is like the same one that we already processed, we kind of just returning nothing, and then we just continue listening. So these functions here are just helpers. We kind of like just getting the headers. This one is just like the IDs. This is just like to keep the code clean, but it's not like pure logic there, right? And this one, for example, is to get the order. When the client checks out, right, we send a notification to a webhook and then we got the data here. So what we're doing is just getting that and cleaning that, right? So we can write it in the sheet. Yeah, and then these last three functions, pretty much once we get these data from the order, we want to do some things, right? So for example, the first part is kind of like the first column that we put in, like how many of these ID product the client requested. So for example, remember you saw like 1x something, that means that, like, right? So we kind of like, okay, for this ID, how many items he requested? Then this is the same thing by using the name. And this one is just like calculating the total, right? So this is just a sum, kind of like, okay, three products, what is the sum of those products? And we put it there in the column price. All right. So this third file here, or like fourth in general, is all the logic that is for Telegram, right? So this one is connected to HTML. So I will explain once we get to the mini app part, the last one. But basically the logic is like, for example, this one is like just extracting the message that Telegram is sending to a webhook. This one is mapping that message. So basically, as you can see here, is like the pattern is that I'm always kind of like using a function to only one thing. So that's why you see multiple functions and they kind of connect like Legos, right? Here we're using this function for the Telegram username. This one is for sending the message to a Telegram chat. So basically, remember, we are using the API, sending something, meaning the welcome message. So that's what I'm doing here, right? And this function here, what it's sending is like to open the mini app, right? So this is just the second message that you get there. that's interacting with the mini app. This one here, let me show you. So yeah, this message here, right? So the first function is this one, the welcome message, and then the second message is how to the mini app itself, right? So it's this one here. So this one is when you click in like these two buttons, remember that you saw there in the ribbon. One is to create or refresh the webhook, and the other one is to clean the backlog. That's pretty much the logic here, right? So one is cleaning the webhook, the other one is just cleaning the backlog, right? And this one, that's pretty much a post request to a URL that we had in config, meaning like we're sending the messages, right? So we're using this one to post, to send messages. So that's the logic here. So if we go to main, you can see here that this pretty much is the orchestrator, right? So this is like the main app flow. So you can see here that it receives the webhook updates, it opens the mini app, save the orders, and sends the confirmation, right? So this is like the orchestrator. So here this do post basically is the webhook, right? So remember when you want to create a webhook in Google Sheets, you need to use do post. So now this one, this do get basically is just like if we want to check quickly if the backend is working, you can see here that it returns a message. Yeah, the backend is working correctly. This is just for testing, just to make sure that it's working. So this function pretty much what it's doing is getting the products and sending that to HTML. This one is the function that kind of takes care of once you interact with the mini app, right? Inputs the name, address, right? You can see here that, and that's what we need, like the form that you see there, right? So this one is we're sending the summary message. Remember, after we interact with the mini app, we click checkout and then the mini app closes. So what we're doing here is just pretty much like creating, like from the data that we got in the mini app, we kind of just creating this, this summary saying like, okay, the order is confirmed, and we're getting the name, the address, and the items, and we're calculating that so we can show a total for the client. Yeah, and then this function, right? So once we send the summary, these functions pretty much what they're doing is just helpers that we need in the mini app. So you can see here for calculating the total amount, for showing the lines, right? This one is for like sending the message to the mini app, right? And this is the logic that I mentioned regarding like when there are duplicates, meaning like, we're getting like a bunch of notifications to the webhook. We need somehow to clean that and to deduct that. So this is what I'm doing here, right? So we're gonna like, this is the orchestrator. We're using the functions that we have here as helpers in Telegram, right? Here we're using those functions, and what we're doing is like cleaning the, making sure that we are only processing only one webhook notification and not like the same one multiple times. You can see here we're getting the events, and then for example here we are making sure that is it a duplicate, yes, no, and based on that we do some logic, right? And these functions here, basically what they're doing is like the mini app itself. So you can see here that, for example, this function renders the mini app. So it kind of like looks up for this file HTML, and that's what we're doing, right? We kind of like rendering that mini app. And then these functions is like part of it, right? So for example, here returns the message of the mini app. So this code here is basically the mini app. You can see here. But again, like we are kind of like splitting each part to be only do one thing. So these utils pretty much is just a function that I kind of like use it in multiple files, and this is just to parse the JSON, right? When we are interacting back and forth with the API and with the mini app. So this one is the one that we use when we are setting up, remember, these two, like the create and refresh the webhook and the clean the backlog. And this is just a toast. Like when you click here down below in the Google Sheet, once you click in those buttons, it will show you if everything was correct, and just as a toast. So for example, this function and open functions in Google Apps Script, meaning like the way they work is that every time you open a Google Sheet, something will happen, right? In this case, it's just creating those two buttons, right? And then here, it's just like creating or refreshing the webhook, right? And then this one is refreshing the backlog, like the cache or something if the webhook had already some queue updates that we didn't process. So again, you want to run this if you want to kind of like start from scratch, you know, something happened in your app and you don't know what happened. The easiest way just to like clean the queue updates, right? Something, maybe something happened in the servers. And then the last functions, you can see, for example, this one, this is just like logic, for example, for these buttons here, because generally, if it is the first time that you are clicking on that button, is the first time you are setting up the webhook, right? So you need to identify that. But if it is the second time or it's like multiple times that you run that button, it's kind of like a refresh, you know? That's pretty much the logic there. And then here, this is just the mini app. So it's a bunch of HTML and CSS just to look to make it look good, what you've seen in the mini app. So the first part, all this is CSS, as you can see here. And then here, these are functions that what they're doing is kind of like interacting with these files that we have here already, right? So you can see here, they're kind of like one initializes the mini app. So once they click there, it kind of like it needs to run something, right? So this function just takes care of that. Just make sure uses the helpers that we have in these other files and then interacts with the app. Same here to return the when the client checks out, and that's the logic here. Yeah, so if you want to edit something in the mini app itself, like how it looks or how it's interacting with the other with the other files here, you do it here, right? So usually the way HTMLs are structured is like the first part, like the part on top is the CSS, the tab below is the code, the functions, right? The scripts. So you can see here, all of that is the styles, and below starts the script. Just in case you're wondering why is it structured that way, okay? And that's it. With that, we have the last part, the code walkthrough. So that's how is everything set up, and you know, like all the functions and stuff. So if you have like some question regarding the architecture itself, just put it down in the comments and I will reply to the question as soon as I see a question, okay? So as always, I hope this was helpful, and yeah, just let me know if you have any questions.